Captain Lisa Morgan stood at the back of the massive council chamber and watched the other species argue about war. The room was huge and filled with beings from 12 different worlds. Some looked like humans, but with pointed ears and perfect faces. Others had scales and sharp teeth. A few had wings or extra arms. All of them seemed angry at the humans. The chamber floated in space around a planet called Kepler. Through the clear walls, Lisa could see stars and ships from many worlds. She had been to this place before, but never felt so unwelcome. Today was different. Today, everyone wanted to fight except the humans. Kirathel Moonwhisper stood near the center of the room. She was an elf with silver hair that seemed to glow in the light. Her skin was perfect, and she moved like a dancer, but her eyes were cold when she looked at Lisa. Kirathel was over 300 years old and had fought in many wars. She thought humans were weak. "The Korthani Empire grows stronger every day," Kirathel said to the other delegates. Her voice was beautiful but filled with anger. "They take more worlds and kill more people, yet the humans want to talk instead of fight. They are cowards who hide behind pretty words." Many of the other beings nodded and made sounds of agreement. Lisa felt her face get hot, but she did not speak. She knew that getting angry would only make things worse. Commander Maya Torres stood next to her. Maya was younger and still believed that talking could solve most problems. She looked upset by the elf's words. Zexara was a large reptile woman with purple scales and yellow eyes. She was almost 7 feet tall, and her people were known for being strong fighters. She hissed when she spoke, which made her sound even more dangerous. "Humans are weak," she said loudly. "They have small ships and small armies. They talk about peace, but peace does not stop evil. Only strength stops evil." The other species began to form groups and make plans. They called it the Iron Pact. It was an agreement to fight the Korthani together without the humans. Lisa watched them draw up battle plans and share weapon designs. Nobody asked the humans for help or advice. They acted like humans did not exist. Admiral Kate Sullivan was watching from her ship in orbit. She sent a message to Lisa that appeared on her small screen. "They think we are afraid to fight," the message said. "They do not understand our history." Lisa knew what the Admiral meant. Earth had fought terrible wars for hundreds of years. Millions of people died in fights that solved nothing. Humans learned that fighting should be the last choice, not the first choice. But explaining this to warrior species was impossible. They saw caution as fear and wisdom as weakness. Maya tried to talk to some of the delegates during a break. She approached a group of bird-like beings with colorful feathers. "We want to help," she told them. "Humans have experience with difficult enemies. We could work together." The bird beings looked at each other and made chirping sounds. Their leader spoke in a high voice. "You can help by staying out of our way. This is work for real warriors, not for people who run from fights." Maya's face turned red, and she walked away. Lisa saw her friend was hurt by the cruel words. She put her hand on Maya's shoulder. "They will learn," Lisa said quietly. "Sometimes people must make their own mistakes." The council session continued for hours. Species after species stood up to speak about military strength and honor in battle. They shared stories of past victories and made promises about future wars. The humans said very little. When they did speak, it was about finding peaceful solutions and protecting innocent people. Humans care more about saving lives than winning battles, Lisa said when it was her turn to speak. "We have learned that the strongest weapon is often the one you choose not to use." Kirathel laughed at this. It was not a happy laugh. "Pretty words," she said. "But words do not stop armies. Words do not protect families. You humans live in a dream world where everyone can be friends. The real world has monsters in it." The session ended with most species joining the Iron Pact. The humans were not invited and did not ask to join. Lisa and Maya walked back to their ship feeling alone and rejected. The other species acted like they had solved everything without human help. But as they reached their shuttle bay, news started coming in. The reports were bad, very bad. The Korthani had built a much larger army than anyone thought. Their ships were strange and geometric like insect nests. They moved in perfect formation like they shared one mind. Intelligence reports showed thousands of enemy vessels gathering at the edge of known space. Lisa read the reports on her tablet as their shuttle flew back to the human fleet. The numbers were frightening. The Korthani had more ships than all the iron-packed species combined. Their technology was advanced and their tactics were unknown. They had been preparing for this war for a long time. "They have no idea what they are facing," Maya said as she looked at the same reports. "The Iron Pact thinks this will be like their past wars, but the Korthani are different." Lisa nodded. She had studied the enemy for months. The insect people did not think like other beings. They worked together like parts of a machine. Their ships and weapons were designed for total war, not honorable combat. They would not follow the rules that other species expected. As their shuttle docked with the human fleet ship, Lisa wondered if the proud warriors of the Iron Pact would learn the truth before it was too late. The Korthani were coming, and pretty. Speeches about honor would not stop them. Soon everyone would see that sometimes the species that seems weakest is actually the wisest. 3 weeks later, the war began with a surprise that shocked everyone. The Korthani attacked 3 different worlds at the same time. Their insect ships appeared without warning and began destroying everything they found. The Iron Pact had expected the enemy to attack slowly and give them time to prepare. Instead, the bug people moved faster than anyone thought possible. Lieutenant Nina Brooks sat in her small office aboard the human observation ship and studied the battle reports. She was only 24 years old, but she was very smart about military tactics. Her job was to watch how different species fought and learn from what she saw. Today, she was learning that the Iron Pact had made a big mistake. The first attack happened at Sarion Prime, which was a mining world with red dirt and 3 small moons. Kirathel led a combined fleet of elf and reptile ships to fight the invaders. Her ship was beautiful and white like a swan. The elf vessels moved through space like they were dancing. They were fast and their weapons were powerful. But the Korthani had set a trap. When the Iron Pact fleet arrived, they saw only a small group of enemy ships. The geometric vessels looked like metal honeycombs with sharp edges. They moved in perfect lines and attacked in patterns that made no sense to the defenders. Kirathel ordered her ships to charge forward and destroy the enemy quickly. This had worked in past wars against other species. Elves were proud of their courage in battle and their skill with energy weapons. They expected to win easily against the strange bug ships. The trap closed when hidden enemy vessels appeared behind the Iron Pact fleet. These ships had been invisible somehow. At the same time, weapon platforms on Sarion's moons began firing massive beams of energy. The Iron Pact ships were caught between 2 groups of enemies and had nowhere to run. Nina watched the battle recordings and saw how the Korthani fought. They did not act like individual ship captains making their own decisions. Instead, they moved like parts of one giant mind. When one ship was destroyed, the others immediately changed their positions to fill the gap. They never got confused or made mistakes. Kirathel's beautiful white ship took heavy damage from the ambush. Her crew fought bravely, but they were not prepared for enemies who thought so differently. The elf ships were designed for one-on-one combat between honorable warriors. The Korthani cared nothing about honor. They only cared about winning. The Iron Pact fleet had to retreat from Sarion Prime. Many ships were destroyed, and many good fighters died. Kirathel escaped, but her ship was badly hurt, and she was angry about the defeat. This was not how wars were supposed to work. Enemies were supposed to fight fairly and follow rules that everyone understood. Ambassador Claire Davis was a kind woman who had been a diplomat for 20 years. She received messages from the Iron Pact leaders after the battle. The messages were carefully written to hide how scared the senders really were. They called the defeat a tactical withdrawal and said they were reassessing the situation. Claire knew what the words really meant. The proud warriors were starting to panic. They had expected an easy victory and instead got a painful lesson. But their pride would not let them ask the humans for help directly. Instead, they sent reports that were meant to make humans offer assistance. Meanwhile, Nina was discovering important things about how the Korthani fought. She spent days studying every piece of information the humans had collected. She noticed that the bug people always did the same things in similar situations. Their coordination was their strength. But it was also a weakness. They fight like a computer program, Nina told Captain Morgan during a video call. They are very good at following their plan, but they cannot change quickly when something unexpected happens. If we could surprise them with tactics they have never seen before, we might be able to confuse them. Morgan was interested in this idea. Humans had always been good at thinking of new ways to solve problems. While other species followed traditions that were thousands of years old, humans were always trying different approaches. Maybe this flexibility could be useful against an enemy that never changed its methods. The second major battle happened at New Avalon, which was home to both elf and reptile colonies. This world was supposed to be too well defended for the Korthani to attack. The Iron Pact had put their best weapons and strongest ships there. They were sure that this time they would win. Zexara commanded the defense of New Avalon. Her battle cruiser was huge and covered with armor and guns. The reptile woman was confident that her people's strength would be enough to stop the invaders. She had fought in dozens of battles and never lost a single one. But the Korthani brought more ships than anyone expected. Their fleet was massive and moved in formations that looked like geometric patterns. When they attacked, they did not try to destroy the defenders quickly. Instead, they slowly surrounded the planet and cut off all escape routes. The battle lasted for 3 days. The iron-packed ships fought with desperate courage, but they could not break through the enemy formation. The Korthani ships worked together perfectly while the defender ships got in each other's way. Elves wanted to charge forward while reptiles wanted to use heavy weapons from a distance. The two species could not coordinate their different fighting styles. On the third day, Zexara's ship was surrounded by 12 enemy vessels. She fought until her weapons ran out of power and her engines stopped working. The proud reptile woman died when her ship exploded in a ball of fire. Her last message was a roar of defiance that other ships heard across the battle zone. New Avalon fell to the Korthani and millions of people became prisoners. The Iron Pact lost almost half of their best ships and their most experienced fighters. The survivors retreated to fortified positions, but their confidence was broken. They had learned that courage and honor were not enough to win against enemies who fought without rules. Nina finished her analysis of the second battle, and her findings were troubling. The Korthani were not just stronger than expected. They were using battle tactics that the Iron Pact could not counter. Every time the defenders tried a standard military approach, the enemy was ready with a perfect response. "We need to help them," Maya told Lisa after reading Nina's report. "They are going to lose this war unless someone teaches them how to fight differently." Lisa agreed, but she knew that offering help would be difficult. The Iron Pact species were too proud to admit they needed assistance from the cowardly humans. They would rather lose with honor than win with help from people they considered weak. But as news of New Avalon's fall spread through the galaxy, other species began to panic. Neutral worlds started evacuating their populations. Trade routes closed. Down as merchants became afraid to travel. The Korthani seemed unstoppable, and their next target was unknown. In her damaged ship, Kirathel stared at the stars and felt something she had never experienced before. For the first time in her long life, the proud elf warrior was truly afraid. The news of New Avalon's destruction spread through the galaxy like a poison. Species that had never feared anything began moving their families to safer worlds. Trade ships stopped traveling and many planets went into lockdown. The Korthani were winning, and everyone knew it. Captain Morgan received a priority message from Earth Command. The blue hologram of Admiral Sullivan appeared in her ready room. "Lisa, you have permission to offer assistance to the Iron Pact," the Admiral said. "But we do this our way, not theirs. No massive fleets or direct battles. We use what makes us human." Morgan understood what this meant. Humans had learned different lessons from their wars than other species had. While elves spoke of honor and reptiles praised strength, humans had discovered that sometimes the best way to win was to avoid fighting altogether. When fighting was necessary, humans preferred to be smart rather than brave. Commander Rachel Stone was preparing her special operations team for deployment. Rachel was calm and quiet, but her people trusted her completely. She had led dangerous missions for 10 years and always brought her team home alive. Her ships were small and fast and built for sneaking rather than fighting. "We are not going to charge into battle like heroes," Rachel told her team during their briefing. "We are going to be ghosts. We hit targets that matter and disappear before the enemy knows we were there. Let the Iron Pact worry about honor. We worry about results." Maya Torres was given the difficult job of convincing the Iron Pack to accept human help. She knew this would not be easy. The proud species had spent weeks calling humans cowards. Now they needed help from the same people they had mocked. She arranged a meeting with Kira Thel aboard a neutral space station. The elf arrived in a damaged ship with scorch marks on its white hull. Kira Thel looked tired, and there were new lines on her perfect face. The defeats had hurt her pride more than any physical wound. "You come to offer help now when we are desperate," Kira Thel said when Maya entered the meeting room. "Where were you when we were strong? Did you wait for us to fail so you could feel superior?" Maya sat down across from the elf and spoke carefully. "We offered help before, and you refused it. We are offering again because people are dying. This is not about feeling superior. This is about stopping the Korthani before they destroy everything." The two women stared at each other for a long moment. Kira Thel's silver hair caught the light from the station's windows. Behind her, the stars seemed cold and distant. "What kind of help?" the elf asked finally. "Your ships are small and your weapons are weak. How can you succeed where we have failed?" Maya activated a holographic display that showed battle recordings from the recent defeats. "You have been fighting them like you fight each other," she explained. "With honor and direct engagement and predictable tactics. But the Korthani are not like other species. They are a collective intelligence that shares thoughts and plans." Lieutenant Brooks appeared on the display screen to explain her analysis. Nina looked very young, but her voice was confident. "We don't think their coordination is magic. It's technology. They use quantum communication networks to share information instantly, but this creates weaknesses we can exploit." Kira Thel listened as the human explained how the enemy's greatest strength could become a weakness. The Korthani were incredibly coordinated, but they could not adapt quickly to unexpected situations. They were like a computer program that could only respond to inputs it had been designed to handle. "You are talking about guerrilla warfare," Kira Thel said with disgust. "Sneak attacks and hiding in shadows. This is not how real warriors fight. We are not assassins or thieves." Maya leaned forward and her voice became passionate. "Real warriors protect innocent people. Real warriors use every advantage they can. Find. The Korthani don't care about your honor code. They only care about conquest. Will you let millions die for the sake of fighting fairly?" Veltar the Honored was an old elf general who had been listening from his own ship. His image appeared on the communication screen, and he looked very tired. "Kira Thel, we have lost too many good people already. Maybe it is time to try a different approach." The elf woman was quiet for several minutes. She stared out the window at the stars and thought about all the friends she had lost in the recent battles. Finally, she turned back to Maya. "Show me," she said simply. The demonstration took place near an asteroid field where the Korthani had built a supply depot. The facility was not heavily defended because the enemy did not expect anyone to attack their rear areas. Iron-packed forces always attacked major targets directly. They never bothered with support facilities. Rachel Stone led a mixed team of human and elf ships into the asteroid field. The human vessels were small and dark and moved silently through space. The elf ships had to learn to fly differently than they were used to. Instead of graceful swooping attacks, they had to hide and wait for the right moment. Kira Thel was aboard her damaged ship and followed the human commander's orders even though it felt wrong to her. Everything about this mission violated her training and instincts. Elves were supposed to face their enemies openly, not sneak around like criminals. The attack began when Amy Chen activated a device that jammed the depot's communications. The Korthani guards could no longer talk to each other or call for help. Without their network connection, they became confused and started making mistakes. Rachel's team struck from 6 different directions at once. They targeted fuel storage, tanks and equipment warehouses and command centers. The humans had studied the depot's layout and knew exactly which targets would cause the most damage. The facility was destroyed in less than 20 minutes. Every building was either demolished or on fire. The Korthani ships that tried to respond were picked off one by one as they emerged from their hiding places. Not a single human or elf ship was lost in the attack. Kira Thel watched the burning depot and felt something she had never experienced before. She had just participated in a perfectly executed military operation that achieved total success without a single casualty. The humans had made victory look easy. "This is how we fight," Rachel explained over the communication channel. "We choose when and where to engage the enemy. We hit them where they are weak and avoid their strengths. We make them react to us instead of following their original plans." The elf warrior had to admit that she was impressed. The human approach had achieved in 20 minutes what a traditional assault would have taken hours to accomplish. More importantly, everyone on her side had survived. In her 300 years of warfare, she had never seen anything like it. Maya Torres watched the mission recordings later and felt hopeful for the first time in weeks. The demonstration had worked perfectly. Kirathel and her people had seen that human tactics could be effective. Maybe now they could work together to stop the Korthani. But she knew that one successful raid would not be enough. The Iron-Pact species would need time to learn new ways of fighting. They would have to overcome thousands of years of tradition and pride. The question was whether they could change fast enough to make a difference. The war was far from over, and the Korthani were still advancing. But for the first time since the fighting began, the defenders had hope. The humans had shown them a new way to fight, and maybe that would be enough to turn the tide. 6 months after humans joined the war, everything changed. The Korthani had grown frustrated with their inability to predict Allied tactics. Their perfect formations meant nothing when enemies refused to fight in predictable ways. Raids on supply lines had weakened their ability to support distant fleets. Intelligence reports from Maya Torres revealed the enemy's desperate plan. The Korthani were gathering every ship they had for one massive attack on Earth itself. They believed that destroying the human homeworld would remove the corrupting influence that had changed how other species fought. "They think if they eliminate us, the Iron Pact will go back to their old ways," Captain Morgan explained to the combined fleet commanders. "They don't understand that people can learn and grow. They still see us as separate species instead of allies." The defense of Earth became the largest space battle in galactic history. Over 5,000 Korthani ships arrived in the Sol system, moving in perfect geometric formations. Their vessels looked like metal honeycombs and moved with the precision of a machine. They had come to end the war with one decisive blow. But the defending fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. Human ships flew alongside elf vessels in mixed squadrons. Reptile battleships protected bird-like fighters. Every species contributed their unique strengths to the combined defense. Kirathel commanded a squadron that included both elf and human ships. Her own vessel had been repaired and upgraded with human technology. The combination of elf energy weapons and human adaptive targeting systems made her ship incredibly effective. "Today, we fight not as separate peoples, but as one united force," she announced to her pilots. "The Korthani came here to destroy what makes us different. Instead, they will learn what makes us strong." General Helen Ward coordinated the overall defense from Earth's orbital command station. She was a veteran of many human conflicts and understood how to use the diverse abilities of different species. Elf ships provided long-range support, while reptile vessels engaged in close combat. Human vessels coordinated everything with their advanced communication systems. The battle began when the Korthani fleet reached the outer planets. Their first wave attacked the gas giant Jupiter, where the Allies had hidden several squadrons. The enemy expected a simple ambush, but instead faced a complex trap that used gravity wells and asteroid fields. Bird-like pilots used their natural, flying instincts to navigate through Saturn's rings while pursuing enemy fighters. Reptile gunners provided covering fire with their heavy weapons. Human engineers had modified everyone's ships to work together better than ever before. Amy Chen's quantum disruptors were deployed throughout the solar system. When the main Korthani fleet reached Mars, the devices activated simultaneously. Suddenly, thousands of enemy ships lost contact with their command network. The perfect formations broke apart as individual vessels began acting independently. But the Korthani had one final surprise. Their command ship was a massive vessel the size of a small moon. It carried its own quantum network generator and remained connected to its fleet even when the disruptors were active. The giant ship began moving toward Earth with hundreds of escorts. Kirathel and Captain Morgan led the desperate assault on the enemy command ship. Both women had recovered from their injuries and were determined to end the war. Their ships flew through waves of defensive fire as they approached the enormous vessel. "Remember what we learned," Morgan said over the communication channel. "We don't have to be the strongest or the bravest. We just have to be smarter. The command ship's defenses were designed to stop massive frontal attacks, but the human elf team used hit-and-run tactics that the enemy could not predict. They struck weapon systems and shield generators while avoiding the main guns. Other Allied ships joined the attack from different directions. Reptile assault troops landed on the command ship's hull and began cutting through the armor. Bird-like pilots attacked the engine systems. Even the peaceful trade species contributed by jamming enemy communications. The battle for the command ship lasted for hours. Corridors filled with smoke and fire as boarding parties fought their way toward the control center. Kirathel and Morgan fought side by side using both elf grace and human tactics to overcome their enemies. When they finally reached the bridge, they found something unexpected. The Korthani commander was not an individual being, but a collective consciousness housed in a giant organic computer. It spoke through multiple voices at once. "You have corrupted the natural order," the consciousness said through its speakers. "Species should remain separate and fight according to their nature. Your cooperation is an aberration that must be eliminated." Morgan stepped forward and looked at the alien computer. "Cooperation is not corruption. It's growth. It's learning. It's what makes us better than we were before." Kirathel activated the device that would destroy the ship's quantum network generator. "We fight together because we choose to. Because we are stronger as friends than as enemies." The destruction of the command ship ended the Korthani coordination permanently. Their remaining vessels flew in random directions without leadership. Many ships simply stopped fighting and drifted in space. The collective consciousness that had controlled them was broken forever. The war ended not with a final explosion, but with silence. The surviving Korthani ships began returning to their home systems. Without their network to guide them, they could no longer function as a unified force. Some individual ship commanders even asked for asylum with the allied species. 3 months later, a new Galactic Council session was held aboard an Earth orbital station. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to sign peace treaties and trade agreements. The chamber was filled with beings who had learned to see each other differently. Kirathel stood at the podium where she had once mocked humanity. Now her voice carried respect instead of contempt. "We believed that courage meant charging into danger without thinking. Humanity taught us that true courage is choosing the harder path, the path that saves lives instead of taking them." "Maya," Torres responded from the diplomatic section, "we have all learned that our different ways of thinking make us stronger together. The galaxy is big enough for all our ideas and all our dreams." The session ended with the creation of the United Species Defense Force. This new organization would be commanded jointly by humans, elves, reptiles, and other species. Never again would any one people face threats alone. Zexara had survived the destruction of her ship and was rescued by human vessels. She now served as a commander in the new defense force. "I once said that humans were weak," she admitted to the assembly. "I was wrong. They are strong in ways that I did not understand." Admiral Sullivan watched the proceedings from her flagship and felt proud of what her species had accomplished. Humans had not won the war through superior weapons or numbers. They had won by teaching others that differences could be strengths instead of weaknesses. The story ended where it began, in a council chamber filled with different species, but now they sat together instead of apart. They planned joint missions instead of separate wars. They had learned that the universe was too vast and too dangerous for any people to face alone. Captain Morgan stood with Kirathel at the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Ships from many worlds flew together in formation. Each vessel was different, but they moved as one fleet. "Do you think it will last?" the elf asked. "This peace we have built?" Morgan smiled and watched a group of young pilots from 6 different species training together. "As long as we remember what we learned, as long as we choose cooperation over competition, as long as we value life more than glory." The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Building a lasting peace would require the same cooperation that had won the war. It would require species to keep learning from each other and growing together. In the end, the humans had not been mocked as cowards. They had been honored as teachers. They had shown the galaxy that sometimes the greatest strength comes from knowing when not to fight. And when fighting is necessary, the greatest victory comes from standing together. After the successful raid, more iron-packed leaders agreed to work with human forces. but cooperation was not easy. The different species had been fighting in their own ways for thousands of years. Learning human tactics felt wrong to many of them. The elves struggled with what they called dishonorable fighting. They wanted to face enemies in open battle and prove their courage. Hiding in asteroid fields and attacking supply lines seemed cowardly to them. Some elf commanders refused to participate in joint missions. The reptile species had different problems. They were used to overwhelming enemies with brute force and heavy weapons. The subtle approach that humans preferred required patience and careful planning. Many reptile warriors found this boring and wanted to attack everything they saw. Amy Chen had been studying captured Korthani equipment in her laboratory aboard the human research ship. She was a young engineer who loved solving difficult puzzles. The enemy technology was unlike anything she had seen before. Their computers seemed to think differently than normal machines. "I found something important," Amy reported to Captain Morgan during their morning briefing. "The Korthani ships all connect to a quantum communication network. That's how they coordinate so perfectly. But if we can disrupt that network, we can break their biggest advantage." This discovery led to a series of coordinated operations against Korthani infrastructure. Each mission targeted a different part of their supply and communication system. The goal was not to destroy their main fleet, but to confuse and weaken them. Operation Whisper was led by Maya Torres, who used her diplomatic skills for a dangerous infiltration mission. Several alien species had been forced to work for the Korthani against their will. Maya's job was to contact these enslaved peoples and convince them to rebel against their masters. She traveled to occupied worlds in a disguised merchant ship. On each planet, she met with resistance leaders and shared intelligence about Korthani weaknesses. The humans provided weapons and communication equipment to help coordinate uprisings. "Freedom is possible," Maya told a group of bird-like rebels on the world of Talon Prime. "The Korthani seem invincible, but they have weaknesses. Work with us, and we can drive them from your worlds." Operation Scalpel was Rachel Stone's specialty. Her teams made precision strikes on Korthani command nodes throughout their territory. These were small facilities that controlled the quantum communication network. Destroying them was like cutting the nerves that connected the enemy's brain to their body. Each raid was carefully planned to avoid major battles. Rachel's ships would appear from hyperspace, hit their target, and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. The Korthani tried to predict where the next attack would come, but human tactics were too unpredictable. Operation Echo was Nina Brooks' idea. She created false intelligence reports that made the Korthani think they were being attacked by phantom enemies. Fake radio signals and sensor readings convinced enemy fleets to chase targets that did not exist. "We are making them fight shadows," Nina explained to her team. "While they waste time and fuel chasing ghosts, we can hit their real weaknesses. Confusion is sometimes better than weapons." Kira Thel found herself working closely with Captain Morgan as the joint operations continued. At first, their partnership was difficult because they came from such different military traditions. The elf valued honor and direct confrontation, while Morgan prioritized effectiveness and keeping people alive. Their relationship changed during the defense of Haven's Rest, which was a refugee world where millions of displaced people had gathered. The Korthani attacked with a large fleet, expecting the usual direct engagement that they could easily counter. Instead, they faced a coordinated defense that combined elf fighting skills with human tactical flexibility. Morgan commanded the overall operation, while Kira Thel led her squadron in ways that would have been impossible before learning human methods. The human ships used electronic warfare to jam enemy communications, while elf vessels attacked from unexpected angles. Refugee transports escaped under cover of the battle, while defense platforms fired from hidden positions among the planet's moons. During the fight, Kira Thel's ship took heavy damage from 3 enemy vessels that surrounded her. Her engines failed and weapons went offline. She was trapped and helpless, while Korthani ships moved in for the killing blow. Morgan saw her friend's danger and made a decision that surprised everyone. She ordered her own ship to ram one of the enemy vessels at full speed. The collision destroyed both ships, but gave Kira Thel time to escape in a rescue pod. "Why did you do that?" Kira Thel asked when she was brought aboard another human ship. "Your ship was destroyed and you were nearly killed. This was not a logical tactical decision." Morgan was in the medical bay with broken ribs and burns on her arms. She looked at the elf through tired eyes. Sometimes logic is not enough. You would have done the same thing for me. This act of sacrifice meant more to Kirathel than any victory in battle. She realized that human cowardice was actually a different kind of courage. They were willing to risk their lives not for glory, but to protect their friends and innocent people. The defense of Haven's Rest became the first major victory for the combined forces. The Korthani fleet was driven away with heavy losses, while the refugee ships escaped safely. More importantly, the different species had learned to fight as one united force. But victory came at a cost. Several human ships were destroyed, and many good people died. Morgan spent weeks recovering from her injuries while Kirathel visited her every day. The elf brought flowers from her homeworld, and they talked about their different cultures. "I was wrong about humans," Kirathel admitted one afternoon. "I thought you were weak because you avoided unnecessary fighting. But it takes strength to choose the harder path. It takes courage to value life over glory." Morgan smiled despite her pain. "We were both wrong about each other. I thought elves were just arrogant warriors who cared only about honor. But honor can be a form of strength when it is used to protect others instead of to seek personal glory." Their friendship became a symbol of the new alliance that was forming between species. Other commanders began to follow their example. Reptile. Warriors learned patience from human advisors. Bird-like pilots practiced stealth techniques. Even the proud cat people started using hit-and-run tactics. Amy Chen made another breakthrough when she successfully created a quantum disruptor device. This weapon could break the Korthani communication network over a large area. The first test was conducted against an enemy patrol squadron. When the disruptor activated, the Korthani ships suddenly stopped moving in formation. Each vessel began acting independently without coordination from the others. They flew into each other and fired at empty space. Within minutes, the entire squadron was destroyed by their own confusion. "This is the key to victory," Amy reported excitedly. "If we can disrupt their network during a major battle, we can turn their strength into weakness. They will become just individual ships instead of a coordinated fleet." The war was starting to turn in favor of the Alliance. Korthani advances slowed as their supply lines were constantly attacked. Rebellions erupted on occupied worlds as enslaved species rose up against their masters. The enemy's perfect coordination began to break down under constant pressure. But the humans knew that the Korthani would not give up easily. Intelligence reports suggested that the enemy was gathering their largest fleet ever for one final assault. The target was unknown, but the threat was enormous. As Morgan recovered from her injuries, she looked out at the combined fleet that now included ships from 6 different species. Humans and elves flew together in mixed squadrons. Reptile battleships protected human research vessels. Everyone had learned that their differences made them stronger when they worked together. The next battle would test everything they had learned. But for the first time since the war began, the defenders felt ready for whatever the enemy might bring.